Before we start, I just wanted to quickly show you guys what I've been up to following the RSS video. Stemming from being able to parse RSS data and mapping it so you can have a grid of multiple sources, I went on to create this full-on web app. The idea is that the homepage will show you a collection of news articles from each news outlet's RSS feed. And then you'd be able to search a specific topic and compare news headlines that way. I've also added a very basic sentiment score. So if you know sentiment analysis from machine learning, it's a very basic version of that. This sentiment score is not supposed to be a be-all and end-all, and it's not always accurate. It acts as more of a helper to get people to think a bit more critically about how sensationalist and potentially biased news headlines can be. I have deployed it, so if you want to check it out, link below. I've got some more ideas and will continue to work on it, but I hope this serves as a motivational purpose in the sense that the skills you pick up are not isolated to what is shown to you on any video. So you can always expand on it and turn it into a bigger project and pick up more skills that way. I personally prefer learning it this way than the big clone projects, but that's a whole thing in itself. So let's move on to exploring the basics of useContext. And once we've done that, I'm hoping we can do another bigger project afterwards. So let's create the React app and install Tailwind CSS. In the meantime, I'll explain useContext a little bit more whilst that's all loading. We've been using useState a lot and it's very useful, but you can imagine how cumbersome it may become once you've got a massive component tree with lots of nesting components. You'll end up spending ages just passing props down each level. When you start coming across this problem, you'll find a particular extremely popular solution, and that's the Redux library, which is specifically for managing and centralizing states. It's great for bigger applications. But before we get there, it's helpful to learn React's own state management hook, useContext. So in summary, useContext is a way to pass data through the component tree without having to manually pass props down each level of the tree. Let's have a look, shall we? I'll zoom in a minute, but let me just set up some components here. Let's say we have a dashboard, a recommendations, and a podcasts page. I'm using a shorthand snippet extension here called ES7 React/Redux. It's got over 7 million downloads, so by probability, we can assume it's safe and helpful to install. RAFCE is short for React Arrow Function Export Component. If you want the traditional function export component, it's RFCE. You also have the option of not including the export statement. There is a whole variety in there, so have a look. As you can see, I'm just adding some basic text to show that there is something here, and we want these to work as actual pages. Although React is a single page application, you can add routes to take users to different pages. I guess in a way, it's kind of a rabbit out of the hat magic trick, or a TARDIS, if you know the reference, in the sense that it ultimately is just one big single page application, but it's bigger on the inside, with all of these routes taking you down this yellow brick path, giving the impression that there are different pages. That's a lot of analogies. But let's see how it works. Let's install React Routerdom first. Then import browser router as router. Routes and root from React router DOM. And whilst we're here, let's just import our dashboard, recommendations, and podcasts, because we'll need it later. To set up our pages, we need browser router, which we've renamed as router, to be wrapping around routes, which in turn needs to wrap around each route. The first one we have is dashboard. So you need to tell the route what the path is going to be called, and you want to give it a sensible name because it'll show up on the browser URL line. And you tell it what is going to be shown in that path. And that's what the element here is for. So element, curly braces, and inside we'll just add the component like this. And that's it. That's the dashboard done. We just need to do the same for recommendations and podcasts. React actually has 3 different kinds of routers: memory router, browser router, and hash router. There's a good blog article that gives a very high-level summary of what each of these do and don't do. I'll add a link to it below, but let's focus on browser router for now. It's by far the most popular router for modern browsers. Okay. Now, context. I'm only going to do the function-based version of useContext. useContext in class-based components is quite different, and I have to say, I don't think I've ever actually used class components in React, only in Java. So if you're looking for a class component version of useContext, now is a good time to exit. Alright, first of all, with useContext, we need to think about what kind of information we want to store. In this example, let's imagine we want to store a user's name once they've signed up or logged in, because we want to personalize this web app for them. We'd like to include their name on every single page of this web app. So let's call this useContext. And then we need to create this context. So far, logically very tight. So we'll have a useContext.js file, and I'm going to put this in a folder called contexts and add it as a new file. Because this is to create the context, we need to import create context from React and then export this. So export const useContext equals create context. And the default value in the parentheses here, we'll just put null. Then we need to wrap every page that will have access to this context in a context provider. What this means is that for every page that we want to display the user's name, we need to wrap it with a context provider that will provide this particular context. And it needs to wrap around our routes actually. So it looks like this. useContext.provider wrapped around our routes just below our router. Inside here, let's have, as an example, a user called Shuri, because I've just watched Wakanda Forever. We just need to put the value as Shuri. Then if we go into our dashboard, we do const user equals useContext, brackets, user context. And you can see from above, it automatically imported useContext from React and user context from our context folder that we just added. Now, if we drop user in this h1 tag and go to localhost 3000/dashboard, you can see it says hello Shuri. Obviously, we don't want to keep going into the URL to take us to each page. So let's break out our home page and let app.js look after only the routers and routes. We'll create a new component called home and set the homepage router in our router and routes to this new home component. Let me just space this out a bit so it looks clearer. In our home, let's add a link to our different pages. This is where the path comes in handy. So we just need to do link to /dashboard and give it a name. Let's say your dashboard. You can see that link from React Router DOM was automatically imported for us. This link element allows the user to navigate to different pages, like an A tag in HTML, which you can also use in React. You don't have to choose between link and A tag. Sometimes you may find that an A tag actually works better in certain scenarios. I'll just style it out a little bit to differentiate our homepage and our links. From this, you can begin to see how navbars come about, right? In our homepage, we can employ the use of useContext and userContext to display that it's Shuri's home. We'll do the same for recommendations and podcasts. If we click on the different links, aha, there it is. At the moment, Shuri is hard-coded into our context provider, but if we had a sign-up login system, we would have that value from our database, which we would have gotten via a get method in our front end and stored, right? So we would have a const user and set user equals useState. But because we don't have a sign up login system, we'll still need to hardcode it into our default value here. And in our context provider value, we just need to replace Shuri the string with user in curly braces. And now if we go into each of our pages, her name is still there. So it's working. Now, what if we want to change the value? You've got to see this. It's almost a bit too easy. So in our context provider here, we just need to pass in set user as well, like this. User and set user in square brackets within our little curly braces. And then in our home page, where we want to give the user the option to change their name, we just need to update this variable here as well to const square brackets user and set user. It's still the useContext and userContext. Next, let's have a button where on click, it changes the name. For demonstration purposes, I won't go into the whole input, on change, update name, and then on click of update button, it handles the change of username. Let's just jump to the on click bit. So on click, all we need to do is set username to whatever name. For example, Alan. Let's see. See, now it's Alan everywhere. And if we change it to Michelle Yeoh, click on edit name, it's now Michelle Yeoh everywhere. I'm hoping for the next video we can put everything we've done recently into one bigger project. So RSS parser, I'm thinking maybe something to do with podcasts. Let's see. We'll use useContext, definitely useState and useEffect, and hopefully some other hooks, maybe useRef, useMemo. I don't know. I'll see if I can find a way to squeeze it all in. But in the meantime, have fun, and I'll see you next time.